Welcome to For the Common Good with Juanita, a show where we inform, inspire, and empower our businesses, our communities, and people just like you. I'm excited about the show today. We're talking about justice for all. What does that mean? Think about it. Over this past year, policing in America, think about the shootings. Think about voting rights. That's why we need to talk about justice for all. And I have the two of the perfect guests today. Jeanette Gordon-Weaver is the Director of Media and Community Engagement for Williamsburg Action, former Vice Chair of Williamsburg-James City County Community Action Agency. And Jessica Sapalio is an advocate for racial justice and criminal legal system reform. She's a founding member of the Williamsburg-James City County Coalition for Community Justice. Help me welcome them to the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
I am so excited to have you on the show talking about justice for all. An important topic, something we need to talk about, and we're not talking about it enough. We're going to start today. What does justice look like to you? When we say justice for all, what does that mean? What does that mean to you?
Justice to me means upholding the worth and dignity of all people. Really, it's about equity, no matter who you are and what your background.
Mm-hmm. Why is it so hard to talk about that?
I think I'm going to dive in on that one. Okay. Equity is the touchstone word for me that Jessica just used.
Yeah.
People often talk about equality, and equality does not mean equity. And the sooner we come to understand that, we can all be given the same thing, but we don't all need the same thing. And that's where the division between equity and equality come in. It's hard to talk about because people get their feelings hurt. Speaking as a Black woman, sometimes it's difficult to start that, it used to be difficult to engage in that conversation because I didn't want to tread on anybody's toes who may be allies or accomplices in making a change or a difference. I wanted to make sure that I verbalized what I was trying to get across without being offensive. And you can't always do that.
When we say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, we say it all the time. Justice and liberty and justice for all. We say it, but we don't live it. So tell us about the organizations that you're involved in, because you're doing some great stuff in the Williamsburg-James City County community. And we're looking at this community today because you're doing some really good things, and we want to hear more about that.
Sure. Well, I am part of the Williamsburg-James City County Coalition for Community Justice. And we are looking at all aspects of the criminal legal system. I call it the criminal legal system instead of the criminal justice system because unfortunately it's not just for all people. So we are looking at everything from how our police operate locally up through our court systems, how people are treated, whether it's based, whether their race, their economic background, etc. We're looking across the board at how we can make change so that we do achieve equity for all people in our criminal legal system.
So tell us more about when you say we, exactly who? Who does that entail?
Yeah, so our coalition was formed last summer of 2020, after the murder of George Floyd, and we are a number. We're individuals, concerned citizens. We're organizations, like Williamsburg Action is a part of our coalition. We have a number of community organizations and faith-based groups.
So our organizations decide that they want to be part of your group. They notify the coalition and said, we want to be part of this group. And okay.
Yes, absolutely. Anyone that is interested in criminal legal system reform is welcome.
Okay. So what are some of the other organizations doing in the community?
Well, Williamsburg Action just came off of a huge celebration. We celebrated the life of George Floyd and did not necessarily focus in on his death and the way he died or how he died. And we celebrated our first year anniversary. The 1 year anniversary coincides with his murder. The night of his death, people were taken to the streets here in Williamsburg, James City County. There were people lying in the streets at the overpass, over at the courthouse. And on the 25th, which was the Tuesday, May 25th, we had a celebration at the courthouse of his life. There were young black men singing songs that they wrote about protecting and saving their lives. There was African drumming, and of course there were protests and our signs, Black Lives Still Matter. We are attempting to be a part of the Williamsburg James City County Coalition. We are part of Coming to the Table. We are part of All Together, all of which are groups that are focused in working on racial equality, racial equity, getting people to talk to one another, and formulating change within our community. We're about to sponsor a Juneteenth celebration in a historically black neighborhood. That coincides, by the way, with the one that's happening in Colonial Williamsburg. There's going to be a parade and the whole nine happening from the heart of the city into that neighborhood. And we plan to do that every year from now forward.
So do you feel that the community is becoming more aware of what is going on? That it's starting to resonate some? Are you hearing the whispers in the community?
I'm going to take that one if Jess doesn't mind. Williamsburg Action has a Facebook page that has almost 5,000 followers.
Ooh.
So there are not whispers, there are people screaming.
Yeah.
There are huge numbers of people who probably before 2020 would never have had any of the conversations that they're having now. Starting in February of 2021, Black History Month, I decided that along with just posting news from across the country as to what was happening in primarily black communities, I would also post our history. I would post, Black History isn't February. It's 365 days a year, every single year. And every single day there is something on our page that talks about everybody from Scott Joplin to, Harriet Tubman to lesser known names, Lewis Latimer and Jack Johnson, and you name it, we're posting about it. We're posting about people who are local, Claire Bird Baker, Clemenza Braxton, you name it, we're letting you know their history, what they've done, the legacy that they left behind, and the changes we'd like to see. And our neighbors are responding. Some of them are very, very positive, and then there are those who literally have questions and argue with every single thing that I say or do. They tend to inbox me when I cut off notifications and cut off commenting. They will inbox me and ask, can we have lunch? And we can talk about the differences. We'll talk about why your daughter got in the Naval Academy and my daughter didn't. I'm sure that affirmative action had something to do with it. And I've had lunch with some of them and explained, no, my kid's just really bright. I don't know what your kid did, but my daughter's really bright. Every black achievement is not something that someone gave us. It's something that we earned.
Wow. And on that note, we're going to take a short break, and we're going to hear more from Jeanette and Jessica about why they're passionate anyway about the racial justice issues. We'll be right back. Don't you go anywhere. Welcome back to For the Common Good with Juanita. And I've been talking to Jeanette and Jessica, and we've been talking about justice for all. Tell me, why are you passionate about racial justice issues in the first place?
Well, that's a big question. I I've dedicated my life to working on racial justice issues because I feel, especially as a white person, that I have an important role to play and a duty. You know, our society has been, you know, built on the backs of Black people and other people of color, and I as a white person have benefited from that my whole life, and it's up to me and people like me to make that change and to be allies, and to push forward. And I mentioned previously the worth and dignity of all people, and you know, that is, you know, we talk about our faith beliefs, that is my faith belief. And I need to live it by doing what I can to make sure that racial equity exists.
It's not something we can just say. We have to put action behind it. And that's the problem, because there are a lot of people out there that mean well, and they want things to change, but no one wants to take that step, that first step. Too many people looking at them may make too many enemies, you know, they may lose friends, and so they're not willing to take this step. So thank you so much for what you're doing.
Oh, absolutely.
So tell us about the racial justice work. Why is it important in Williamsburg and James City County?
Absolutely. I mean, this is where it all began, right? And we're standing on the land where, you know, slavery in America began. And I look today at the criminal legal system as a continuation of modern day slavery. You know, we had slavery, and we had, you know, Reconstruction and Jim Crow and the civil rights movement, and yet, and here we are, we're still mass incarceration. And you know, we need to take action on that. So I feel that in Williamsburg, James City County, we have the opportunity to be an example for the rest of the country.
Love it.
And so we need to take action here, and we can do this as citizens, you know, and community members. We can join together. We are joining together and working hard on this. If we all just do something, you know, we can make real change.
So when you talk about creating the model for the country to, you know, what justice should look like, how does that work? I know you have the coalition, but what are some of the other things that we're doing to make that difference? What does that model look like?
Yes, so as we're looking at criminal legal system reform, we're pushing for a couple of different things. The first is accountability and transparency with our police departments. We know that there are so many issues, we hear about them in the news, but this is nothing new. This has been going on, you know, our modern day policing system came out of the night patrols for slavery. And so this is not a new system, and actually very little has changed. So as a community, we need to make sure that we are holding our police departments accountable. You know, this isn't about a good cop or a bad cop. This is about the system. And we need to, you know, the IRS wouldn't have you audit your own taxes, so we shouldn't have the police, you know, auditing themselves and looking into complaints about themselves. So we need an oversight board made up of community members, independent community members, that can look into complaints about our police to make and look at, you know, our statistics, our policing statistics. We know that communities of color are being over-policed just by looking at arrest rates. So we need an independent body that can look into those issues and help us prevent a George Floyd level tragedy. It could happen in our community, and we want to make sure it doesn't. So that's one priority. We're in the court systems every day. We're observing appearances before judges after someone's arrested. We're watching their bail hearings. We're watching their first appearances to make sure that they're being treated equitably.
And so what systems in place for people who are incarcerated, for them not to go back into that life or that not to happen again? Do we have systems like that in place, or is that something we're looking at?
Yes, we are looking at that too.
Wow.
We are looking at diversionary programs, so things like drug courts. A large portion of our local arrests are drug and alcohol related. We do not believe that prison is a great place to rehab people. So, so we are looking at setting up a drug court locally where people can get the help they truly need rather than going into prison. Really deal with the root of the problem, which is addiction. So we're looking at those types of programs. We're looking at what happens when you come out, restoration of voting rights, for instance, for felons. We want to help with that. You know, people have served their time. There is no reason that they shouldn't have their full rights returned to them.
That is amazing. So those are some of the things that are going on right now that we're looking at. Wow.
If you also look at our page, the Williamsburg Action page, you will find that now there is a push or a move to, because there are so many people asking for employees saying that people are staying home and not seeking jobs, we're asking you to hire felons, former felons. We are starting organizations to help place those who have a record in some of the local industries around who are complaining about not being able to have people come to work for them. And we are partnering with Williamsburg James City County Coalition to help get people restored their rights to vote.
So then how would that work? They would actually contact someone to say,
Well, what we have happening right now on our page are a lot of people who are employers who have small businesses are inboxing their phone numbers, the positions they have to offer, and saying if you have anybody who has signed up. Not very many people are going on Facebook and saying, I have a record, I'm a felon. But they are reaching out in your inbox and saying, hey, I see you have HVAC work that's available, or someone needs a dishwasher and they're paying $15 an hour. Is there contact information that we can give?
So you're matching them.
We are matching them up.
Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. And that's working well.
That's working well. That is working well.
That's amazing. I mean, I love the innovative, creative approaches that we're doing to try to help people, meet people where they are.
Exactly. One of the things I like to remind people is that Williamsburg is not that much different from Charlottesville. What occurred in Charlottesville absolutely could take place here. Same
and many other cities around the country, right?
But just because it's in Virginia, it's the same demographics, it's the same breakdown. We're a college town. Half conservative, tons of money in one pocket, no money in another pocket. What happened there could very easily happen in Williamsburg. We're not the utopia that people like to believe that we are. We've got problems too. You just don't see them.
Wow. So we're going to talk more about next steps and where do we go from here? This is really exciting and we really need to do a show. Justice for all. We'll be right back. Welcome back to For the Common Good with Juanita. And I've been talking to Jeanette and Jessica. And we've been talking about justice for all. And one community town, Williamsburg, Virginia, and James City County, and what's happening on the ground there and how they are developing the model that other communities can use. And I love the innovation and creativity here. So let's talk about next steps. What are some of the next steps? What happens next? Where do we go from here?
Yes, so we are, as I mentioned, we're working on setting up a civilian oversight board, sometimes called civilian review board, and we need community members to show their support for that. We need to talk to our board of supervisors, our city council, and our police chiefs to say that we want accountability and transparency. So one of the best ways to do that, if you visit our coalition website at wjccjustice.org, you can find a petition to sign to show your support of police accountability. You can also get information on how to get involved with us. We invite anyone to come to our meetings. Right now they're still on Zoom every other Wednesday at 7 o'clock. So anyone that's interested in the topic is welcome.
So tell me about the board. You said the board would be developed or formed?
Yes, the Civilian Oversight Board would be what we need is the City Council and the Board of Supervisors to work with us to establish that. We would be selecting members from the community
Okay.
that are independent, that do not have a policing background. They would be highly trained on police practices and policies. And then they would handle any complaints that come in about the police, and they would also look and evaluate current policies, current policing policies and practices to see how we can address current disparities in policing.
And will they have access to data to look at some of the data and what's happening historically?
Absolutely. They will have data. They will have, ideally, it needs to be set up with subpoena power so that they can truly carry out investigations on incidences that occur. And last year during the special session of the General Assembly, a law was passed empowering these groups to have subpoena power. So this is a really important entity that we need to establish in our community to ensure accountability.
I think that's awesome. It sounds like something every community should have.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yes. And there are several communities around Virginia that have either established these or are in the process of establishing them. Charlottesville, as Jeanette mentioned, and several others, Richmond, Enrico, Norfolk, they're all working on establishing these. It's important.
So I want to go back to try to understand, is the board appointed, or how are the board members selected, or have we determined that?
Yeah, it's, what we're hoping to do is work collaboratively with our city council and board of supervisors to establish the framework and how this will work. But the police will not be involved in selecting the members. That's critical. And what we have recommended is, the Board of Supervisors, City Council, they could have the option to select some of the seats, but then important community groups that are working on these issues, like our coalition, Williamsburg Action, faith groups, would also submit names for these members.
And then there would be a level of screening, I'm sure.
Sure.
That would happen.
Sure, but we want people from all backgrounds. They don't necessarily need to have specific knowledge about that, because they'll be given extensive training. And we want to make sure that the communities, particularly affected communities that are over-policed, we want to make sure that they are given the most representation.
This is exciting. I love this.
Initially, Virginia Beach voted down having a board of this nature, but after the shooting of Donovan Lynch, they have reconvened, taken another vote, and they're working now toward looking to have a board of this nature there as well. Like I mentioned his name, there are hundreds of names I could call every single day, names that I have no business knowing. Philando Castile, Tamir Rice, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Tatiana Jefferson. It goes on and on and on. Williamsburg Action every Sunday. We were meeting at 5 at the courthouse. Now we're meeting at 7. We're reminders. We're coming out with our Black Lives Matter signs. We're wearing our t-shirts. We're screaming to the tops of our lungs. Remember, this happened. These people still exist. Just because people have received a payoff from a town or a city, millions of dollars, it does not bring back a life, and it does not mean justice. It simply means we know we did something wrong. We're going to pay you and have you be quiet. Unfortunately for us, some of the passion kind of died down a little bit after the Floyd trial. And we're here to remind you, people are still being murdered. Things are still happening, and no one's being held accountable. So if you have the opportunity and you can, go to williamsburgaction.org. That's our website. You can see what we have been doing. You can see what we plan to do in the future. And you can join us any Sunday at 7 o'clock, anywhere in the nation. Go to your courthouse or a public building and just hold up signs and remind people that people are still dying, that there still hasn't been justice for some of these children.
Yes, justice doesn't just happen in the courtroom. Justice happens when there's systemic change, and that's what we all need to keep fighting for.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's the system that's broken. So community members can engage and support your work. So anyone can contact you, look at the website, and get involved in that.
Absolutely.
So are churches involved in many of these initiatives? Yeah.
Williamsburg Unitarian Universalists, I'm going to sing their praises. They show up and show out for every single thing that happens. One of my sorrows is that the Black church has not been vocal. We haven't seen or heard from them in all of 2020. Nobody has been involved. Individuals have shown up
Right.
here and there, but by and large, if you're speaking truth to power, but you're only doing it Facebook Live or Zoom to your certain segment of the population, you're not speaking truth to power. Nobody hears you. We need you to be heard. During the 60s and late 50s under Dr. King, the church was ever present.
Yeah,
I can't
it
say that
wasn't.
anymore.
Right. Yeah. Losing the power behind the church being involved. So everyone has a role and a responsibility. You know, we're all here. The name of the show is For the Common Good, because we're all here working towards the common good, and that means everyone has to get involved.
That's right.
But thank you so much for what you're doing, ladies, and thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show today.
Thank you for
Yes,
having us.
Thank you so much.
You are welcome. And thank you, our listeners, for tuning in to For the Common Good with Juanita. We'll see you next time.